Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Rough Riders, where every week we talk writing, self publishing, and making it as an author. Today, I have a sci fi author with me. I am very excited because, as it's becoming probably very evident very quickly, I'm clueless when it comes to fantasy. And I'm just talking to all these fantasy authors who are making me realize I don't know a whole lot. So I am very happy to be talking to someone within my own genre. So today, I've got with me W.O. Torres. So, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Joey. Appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. So let's start where I guess we're always starting so far. And just kind of, I want to hear a little bit about your background. You had sent me your author bio, and there was actually a lot there. And I think it'll be really cool to hear where you came from because this is it's different than a lot of the other people's backgrounds that I've heard.
Yeah, so I'm, mid 50s. I'm Gen X for sure. I was 7 years old on May 25th, 1977, when me and my mom and sister went to go see this movie called Star Wars that was coming out, and it changed my life. I know people will argue that it's fantasy, but it's sci-fi to me. Hyperdrives and blasters, and Death Stars. That's all sci-fi to me, and it literally changed my life. It was a watershed moment. 7 years old. It's to this day, kind of a driving force throughout my entire childhood and life. My daughter, one of my youngest daughter, was even born on May 25th, so I know it's fate. So that kind of started all. I grew up in Northern California, really got into Star Trek and Star Wars, kind of competing for my attentions early on in the mid 70s. And then around the late 70s, I stumbled across a comic book store, and that also changed my life. And I started getting into, X-Men with Chris Claremont and John Byrne, and then Spider-Man with Tom DeFalco and John Romita, and Daredevil with Frank Miller, and just all those stories. I had all these stories in my head, and seeing them on the ink and the colors just brought it to life. And if I could go back when I was in third or fourth grade, I read a short story by Ray Bradbury called "A Sound of Thunder." I don't know if you're familiar with that story. It's the
Not that one specifically, but I know
that's the
Bradbury.
yeah, yeah, that's the famous one that people also call or dub the butterfly effect, because it's a quick synopsis on it because it plays a big part of my life. It's a story where it's in the future, and there's an agency and they control time travel, and you can sign up for these adventures. And one adventure is you can hunt a dinosaur, but it's only a dinosaur that they've determined is about to die anyways, natural causes. And if you stay on the path and shoot the dinosaur, you get this thrill and you come back. But they warn everyone, do not step off the path under any circumstances. Of course, this
I was gonna
billionaire,
say, of
yeah,
course,
of
of course they
course,
walk off the path.
steps off the path. They come back. Everything has changed. They're in a dictatorship. The world is completely flipped upside down. They look at the bottom of the guy's boot, and there's a dead butterfly at the bottom. And it's just that, butterfly effect, that chaos theory, that tiny little change from so far away. That was a watershed moment for me, because in third or fourth grade, when I read that, I thought, oh, so you could just make up anything. Like, you could literally just sit down and just make up anything, just make shit up and just go. And I was a big fan of Bradbury, plus his prose, his amazing, way of telling stories. But that moment for me was just like, okay, so I can be a writer because I can make up stuff too. I can just sit down and just make up crazy stuff too. So
Nice.
those are my
I
big
feel like
influences.
that's like and I've probably said this before, but I feel like that's one of the best parts about sci-fi, and this applies
Yes.
to fantasy too. But like you get to make shit up. It's so
Yeah.
fun. Like
It,
it's just you really are completely unbounded. Like you can just write whatever
nothing.
you want basically. And I mean, there's always going to be like the readers who are going to be like, "Wow, that's not scientific or whatever." But ultimately, it's just your imagination. You can come up with whatever you want. It's science fiction. Like it's
Right.
just you do whatever. And another thing, I am so envious that you got to see Star Wars from the very beginning. That no, it
Yeah.
must have been crazy. Like
Oh my God.
my parents were saying to me how, because they're around the same age, and they were saying that, like, sci-fi had been around. It's not like sci-fi was new, but that people had
Right.
never seen anything like that before, and that
No.
it like blew up, and that just must have been the coolest thing, and like so mind blowing. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I was 7. My father-in-law is exactly 20 years older than me. So he was 27 and he's a diehard sci-fi fan. And they had, like you said, there was all the 50s sci-fi and 60s sci-fi they grew up with. But he said he and a bunch of his friends went to go see it. And that opening scene where the starship just goes over the camera forever, he said they were literally just grabbing each other and just freaking out because they'd never seen anything like that. And that's
yeah,
3 seconds into the movie. That's so yeah, that movie just it's crazy to have
yeah.
experienced it live when it came out.
Well, sci-fi, like Star Wars is so different than the kind of 1950s and 1960s
Right.
sci-fi, because I feel like those were very, it was a lot of chrome, like it's very
Hmm.
shiny. It was very kind of like an almost like utopian sort of view of the
Yes.
future. And while Star Wars is not apocalyptic by any means, it's certainly
Hmm.
not the kind of at least the older ones like A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back and all of that are a little bit darker
Right.
than what you see in the sci-fi that came before it. And then it's also a much bigger universe than the ones that than its predecessors. Like this is like grand scale space opera stuff, and you have
Right.
all these different aliens that are so like diverse looking, and they're not just like, I mean, they are people in costumes, but they're not just like, people with blue skin or something. Like
Right.
they
Right.
had, like it's totally different. So it must have been so cool. Like I'm so jealous that you got to
I
see
mean,
that.
not only that, but to your point, the Millennium Falcon is a hunk of junk, and
Hmm.
in every sci-fi movie before that, they would never think of having a ship with so much wear and tear on it, because it was always the shiniest, brightest, coolest looking thing, and just to have that scene where even Luke calls it out, and you can see
What a piece
how
of junk. Yeah.
yeah, just it was just those little things like that that Lucas just set the bar way ahead. But
Hmm.
yeah, I do have vivid memories of like just upturning second grade and Mrs. Gardner trying to get control of the room because all we wanted to do was talk about Star Wars. And one of the kids in the class, his dad owned a liquor store, and he would get stacks and stacks of the trading cards. And it's all we did. We were just obsessed with those trading cards. And she was constantly trying to confiscate them and just gain control of it. And she had no idea like what she was competing with Star Wars.
Yeah,
And
that's crazy. Like
yeah,
I remember this is that kind of only kind of related, but when I was in elementary school is when Pokemon became
yeah,
big in the
oh yeah,
US at least. And everyone had the trading cards, and they actually had to ban them at my
yeah,
elementary school because kids were just doing that and trading those and like trading their lunch money for them instead of actually like paying attention and buying food. And so I'm just picturing what it was like with that. It must have been just as crazy, if not worse, with like Star Wars kind of
yeah,
merchandise and stuff. So yeah, that's really fun though. Like I'm envious. So I know that with your background, you had mentioned in your author bio that growing up at that time and watching these movies and TV and all of that, that you didn't see a whole lot of people who looked like you. So I know that that is kind of important to you with your own writing to have
yeah,
kind of representation. So could you tell us a little bit about that element of you, like that part of your identity and kind of what it meant to
sure.
you?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this. I came online as far as cognitively aware of sci-fi in 1976 when got obsessed with Star Trek. And for Christmas in 1976, I got all 7 of the like 8-inch cast members and the transporter room. And I still have like pictures of that. So 1976 to 1999, I'm 6 years old to 29 years old and just obsessed with science fiction. In that time span, I can only think of 2 characters in science fiction that are Latinx or Latino or Latina. And that's Private Vasquez from Aliens, one of the most badass female characters of all time.
Hmm.
But her real name, the actress, is actually Jeanette Goldstein, and she's Brazilian and Jewish. She's not
Okay.
Latina, but
Yeah.
still,
Yeah.
nonetheless, one of the most amazing, characters ever. And then APOC from The Matrix, which is a very, very, who actually is Latino in real life, a very minor role. I think he's got like 2 or 3 lines and he's killed off. But I mean, that's a long time span to
Hmm.
go from 6 years old to 29 years old without seeing a single person in your favorite genre who looks anywhere remotely like you, to where we are now, where we have, the Mandalorian is, Latino. We have Poe Dameron, one of the lead characters in the Star Wars movie. We have uh, um, um, Zolo Maraduena, the kid from the Cobra Kai movies. He's starring in the Blue Beetle, which is, major production movies pushed by major studios. So where we have, that representation now. So it's all getting much, much better. And I'm glad for this generation. But growing up, there was never, ever. And when I think about just a small example, like Lando Calrissian, I had a black friend. We were, 10 years old when Empire came out, and he so identified with Lando. And I love Lando too. But I mean, he really identified with Lando because even though Lando's in a different galaxy, and it's not like the plight of the African American male, can be delved into that story because it's a different galaxy. But still, just seeing someone that looked like him, or looked like someone that he might be related to, like he just really connected with it. And that just wasn't there for Latinos from that whole 70s, 80s, 90s. It's getting better now for sure, but so that's something that when I wrote my story, I thought, well, at the very least, I'm gonna, make the main character Latino because that would be, that'd be nice to see in a sci-fi and also something I relate to.
Well, you write in a subgenre of sci-fi that I would love to hear you explain and kind of talk about because it's certainly one that I had never really heard of or thought of. And you write in Chicano-Futurism.
Yes.
So could you? I mean, I know Chicano and all of that, but could
Okay.
you describe that a little bit to people who maybe aren't familiar with what that would be about?
Sure. Yeah. So Chicano, just in case anybody listening not sure, it's folks from who live in America, who are born in America, who identify as Mexican, versus Latino, where you could be from any Spanish-speaking country. But Chicano specifically, people who identify as Mexican with the culture, usually, some generational ancestry from it. So for me, I'm first generation Mexican. My mom, born and raised in Mexico her whole life, and came to America, and I was born here in America. So I'm Chicano. And so Chicano Futurism, I hadn't heard of it either until about 18 months ago. And I'm on Twitter, and I met a guy named Scott Russell Duncan. He's the editor of a Latinx literary magazine called Somos en Escrito. And
Hmm.
it's a literary magazine. And he put it out there that they're looking for short stories in Chicano Futurism for an anthology book. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, did a quick Google search of his Chicano Futurism. I'd like to, but never wrote in it. And he said, just go for it. Just send some. So I did. It's getting published in the second volume of El Porvenir Ya, which is The Future Is Now.
Hmm.
It's an anthology coming out later this year. And so what it is it gets its roots from Afrofuturism, and it's an art form that can be expressed, literary terms with speculative fiction, science fiction. You can, write poetry. You can use art. Basically any medium that imagines a different future despite the realities of the present, with a strong connection to the past of the Mexican culture and people. So, for example, I wrote a story called El Viejo y el Diablo, The Old Man and the Devil. And in the story, it focuses on two people, the old guy and the person perceived as the devil. and they're in the Ciudad de Mexico, Mexico City, which is, one of the biggest cities in the world. But in my story, it takes place 75 years in the future, and Mexico City is the Silicon Valley of the world. It's the tech center. And in my story, I imagine a reverse migration where instead of people coming from, Mexico and Central America up to America, it's the reverse because of some stuff that's happened 75 years in the future. So it's just kind of, also connecting to the culture of, everything from, food, music, and, clothes and customs, traditions, and then putting a scientific, futuristic edge that's different than anything that's currently going on.
That's cool. And then you
Yeah,
wrote another short story too called La Zona.
I did.
And and that was published elsewhere. That's not part of Somos en Escrito, right? I
No,
think that was something else.
that's on Latin literature, Latina,
Okay.
with a Latine, which kind of
Hmm.
encompasses
To be like
masculine and
gender neutral.
feminine. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
Latina literature,
So
latinalit.com. Sorry.
okay. So La Zona is also Chicano-Futurism. So what's that
That
one
one,
about?
that one's time travel, and I
Oh,
don't know if that
cool.
one
Okay.
qualifies under Chicano-Futurism as much because it's present day, but
Hmm.
it's
Oh, okay.
all Latino characters, and it's time travel. And that was a fun idea. I just kicked around with my teenage daughter, and she said you should write about that. And
Hmm.
I wanted to think, what would it be like for three guys my age to go back in time and play themselves in a game of basketball?
Hmm.
Because so me and my friends all sitting around bullshitting at a taqueria over some beers, saying what it would be like to go back in time and play our 20-year-old selves in basketball. And so this happens in the story, and it's kind of an omniscient point of view from the keeper of time
Hmm.
who tells it. And so it's got a lot of Spanglish in it, and it's a lot
Okay.
of lot of fun dialogue, and a very cool little Twilight Zone twist at the end. And that's kind of,
Oh, keep going. Sorry, I
oh, I
didn't
was
mean
going to
to.
say
Yeah.
that's why it's called La Zona, because it's my
Hmm.
homage to the Twilight Zone.
Hmm. So is is La Zona and particularly El Viejo y El Diablo, is that
Uh-huh.
are they're in English, or is
They're
because
in English,
the titles
100%.
are Spanish, so I wasn't
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, no, they're
Okay.
100% English. I do that thing of where I'll say something in Spanish and then the narrator will kind of casually translate it without it being
Okay.
too obvious.
Hmm.
But then there's a lot of Spanglish words that most people generally know, that I don't have to translate,
Hmm.
adios,
Yeah.
gracias,
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Have you
stuff
ever
like
thought
that.
about putting out any of these in Spanish? Given that, like, you're representing an audience that is, I don't know if some people maybe it would be easier in Spanish, like even if you didn't write it in Spanish yourself, like
Right.
having it translated or something, because
Yeah.
like I know Italian, I could never imagine writing a novel in Italian. Like
Uh-huh.
I would never be able to write it at the same level, like as I could write something in English, even though I'm like fairly good at Italian. So
Okay.
yeah, so like I couldn't imagine actually writing like my own book and like translating it myself.
Right.
But I don't know if
Same.
that's something you ever thought of. Yeah, like that's a lot of work, especially since,
My mom would have to do it, or I'd have to pay someone to translate
yeah,
it. But
yeah.
that's a good
Hmm.
idea. I never thought about it.
Yeah, it's just, doing translations I feel like is really hard because like while Spanish or Italian or another European language, you can kind of you can translate from English to that fairly well. Like there's not going to be a ton of times where it's going to be tough to translate something. Like there it comes up, but for the most part it's they're European languages. They're all very similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But when you're writing prose, you're writing like
Yeah.
literature, that's when it gets a lot harder to directly translate. So like doing a translation of a book ends up being like writing an entirely separate book because you're not really going to translate every sentence exactly into the book
Right.
because it just won't sound right. So I just didn't know if you had ever thought about that because I've thought about it before and then always decided
Oh,
not to. So and then it's a lot of work. But
no, I think
yeah.
I thought of it as you got to be big time to where you can say translated in, several languages. But I have
Hmm.
seen some TikToks out there where people have translated their book so that it's available to a wider audience. So it's a good point to bring up for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's expensive to get a translator
I
like
bet.
for a long book, so that's
Oh
way
yeah,
better for short stories.
yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about your novels then. Shifting away from the short stories. So
Okay.
it looks like you're writing a trilogy, and you've got two parts out so far. So
Yes.
the first one is tomorrow. So the series Tomorrow Lives Today, and then the first
Yes.
book is The Singularity Is Here, and then the second one is Enter the Butterfly. So,
Correct.
so you released those about like around a year apart, a little over a year
Hmm.
apart. The first one was 2022, and then Enter the Butterfly was 2023. So, here's the part that authors always end up hating, which is tell us about your book. So, tell us about your book.
Okay, you're right. It is the part
Mhm.
we hate the most because it's this weird gene that we don't like to brag. We don't like to talk about our books, no matter how popular you get. Not that I'm popular, but I've heard this from authors, like Neil Gaiman on down,
Yeah.
that there's still a little bit of that, imposter syndrome going on of who really wants to hear about it. But since I'm here and I'm talking about my book, it is a trilogy. Book 3 is going to come out this year. I'm the very end of writing the first draft right now, and hope to release it around the holidays, November, December. And just a quick background on the genesis of it. So I believe in signs like that the universe sends out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't particularly, have a religion per se, but I just believe in signs, and the universe has weird ways of talking to folks. So November 11th, 2018, I'm going to bed at my father-in-law had just passed away, and he was a huge sci-fi fan and a big influence in my life. He passed away, and me and my wife were spending the night in his house. We were house sitting the pets because my wife's mom was away. And so I'm going to sleep in his bed, and I start getting this image of this guy, this character who, doing some time travels behind it. As I'm starting to fade off to sleep, there's time travel. There's a weapon of futuristic mystery. There's another person that's helping him. That's his granddaughter from the future. And I just start fading off, and I start thinking about it. Wake up in the morning, I grab my phone, and I start, putting as many thoughts from that lucid dream as I can. And I'm listing out all the bullet points of all the things I can remember, and I call him Tomorrow Man because that's all I could think of at the time. Get on my phone, and I see that my childhood idol, Stanley, passed away during that night. And I thought, this cannot just be another story that I tuck away in my brain. I put it on a hard drive. I scribble in a journal. I just have unfinished somewhere. I'm 48 years old. I got to do something with this story. So this is 6 years ago. So I didn't know what to do because up until that time, I'd never heard of self-publishing. I'd only heard of traditional publishing and thought, that's like winning the lottery. And I thought, well, maybe
Yeah.
I'll just write it and I'll just keep it. I'll just put it on, print it out, and I'll just keep a little, thing and just, to do it because I just feel like there's a sign. And then a couple months later, around my birthday, I saw that an article on self-publishing, and I just said, okay, I'm going to finish this story. I'm going to finish all 3 of these books that I have in my mind. And even if one person reads it and just gives one review, I will consider that a success. And so, fortunately, more than one person has read it. One more,
Yeah, I was gonna say clearly more than one person has read it, because when
yeah,
I was looking on Amazon, I was like, okay, yeah, like it's not easy to get people to review stuff. So,
right.
so that's
I've
it.
been
Like,
fortunate to have.
yeah, absolutely,
That's kind of the genesis of it. So I'm just going to read the blurb
that's
because
totally fine, totally fine.
I'm
I would probably do the
terrible at.
same thing. Yeah, I'm like, if I had to talk about my book right now, which thank God I don't have to,
Uh,
then that's probably what I would do, because off the top
Yeah,
of my head, I would be like all over the place. So
I know.
yeah, go right ahead.
My my nightmare scenarios, I'm in an elevator with a producer and he asks me to pitch my book, and
Oh my God, I know, it's horrifying.
I
I would freeze. There's
yeah,
no way. Yeah,
right.
I'd be like, I write like that. That's
Yeah.
all I would get out.
I'd get out time travel and that's it. And he'd be like, okay,
Hmm.
it's time travel. But
Yep.
it's so much more. So here we go. When a mysterious weapon composed of dark matter mysteriously arrives from the future, 24-year-old Brody Rodriguez's chill life gets a superpowered upgrade. A clandestine government agency led by Agent Gonzo and a squad of sinister spies kidnap Brody and his future tech to save democracy, or at least their version of it. Brody's only ally is his time-traveling granddaughter, Isabella, who wields a future tech weapon of her own. Brody must convince his future wife, Des, to stick around his chaotic life long enough to fall in love or watch him die. As an impending AI war inches closer, threatening humanity, Brody will face who he was, who he is, and who he is meant to be. So I had this idea for the story, but it really didn't connect to what was going to kind of drive the antithesis or the villain of it until I read an article on the technological singularity,
Hmm.
which it's just that hypothetical in 2018. This was hypothetical. Now it's a little more to realistic, but
Yeah.
and a lot's happened since 2018, if you can believe that. But in
Hmm.
2018, I read an article, random article on the technological singularity, which is just this hypothetical future point where technology becomes so advanced that it just outpaces the human mind, and uncontrollable consequences start to take place. So
Hmm.
once I read that article, that really connected the dots, and I thought, I got this guy, and I want this to be about time travel because that's my favorite subgenre of sci-fi. But I don't want him to go forward, and I don't want him to go back because that's been done. Uh, and so instead, I thought, what if he just stays right here in the present, but the technology from the future comes to him, and he's got to do some stuff
Oh,
before
okay.
before we get to the future.
Hmm.
So the whole setting is 2018, 2019, 2020, San Francisco Bay Area. But this technological singularity travels from the future, 50 years in the future, attaches to him, and then chaos ensues.
That's interesting, because yeah,
Yeah,
most of the time it is the character hopping into the past or the future, and
right,
not it kind of like arriving on their doorstep like that.
right.
So that is a good way to kind of turn the time travel theme like on its
Trope.
head. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Instead of just kind of doing what is fairly typical,
I
like
didn't want to
timeline or
do,
something.
yeah, I didn't want to do fish out of water where he shows up in the past and he's not familiar with the customs or whatever. Or
Hmm.
then it's more historical fiction, and I didn't want to do future because I really didn't want to spend most of my days trying to think of like, well, what else could be different in the future? Like I wanted to
Hmm.
just get into the meat of a story of, at its root, it's a love story between him and Destiny Jordan, the female
Hmm.
love interest in the story. And then, of course, this time travel with a teenage, granddaughter from the future, and this 24-year-old clueless kid who's trying to figure out becoming this super soldier,
Hmm.
all kind of meshed together.
Nice. You mentioned the super soldier. So is there like an action element to this? Like, is it kind of does it have that sort of like theme
It
to it?
is it is nonstop action, and that's not
Okay.
just me. That's like almost
Hmm.
every review, and
Yeah,
that
because I was
was
gonna say the cover to me looks like something that would have action, and I actually do want to ask you, because this is a theme that has been coming up with. I've seen it online a lot, where like indie authors will wonder where to get a cover. So I do want to ask you where you got yours, because they're very they look very nice, and I feel like that is a huge benefit when it comes to trying to sell a book. If the cover is appealing, and yours definitely are, and they suit the genre that you're writing in. So I see the one for the second book over there, and then you were just
uh-huh.
reading from the other ones. But yeah, how did you go about getting the cover for that? Just like out of curiosity.
So I spent a lot of time in those first 4 years of writing this book on Twitter, back when it was Twitter, not X. And I found the writing
Hmm.
tag the writing hashtag, writing community, and met
Mm-hmm.
so many people in the writing community, and it helped me so much as a writer. And then I found a Facebook group, and again, helped me so much. That was the first time I shared my writing. I started sharing it with sci-fi fans and just really getting better as a writer and growing. And then I started following a bunch of artists. And, first people hit you up into DMs and like, hey, I see you're a writer. I'd love to, work with you on. So I was going back and forth and I'd find a lot of artists. And I found this artist. And this is
Mm-hmm.
the original cover of my book. This is an antique. This is a collector's
Mm-hmm.
item.
I was gonna
There's
say it'll be
only
worth something one day.
this,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
This is the only one of two copies ever. One person bought and one I bought. So there's only
Mm-hmm.
two of these. But this is an artist I found on Twitter. And this is, at first, I thought I wanted kind of a playful cover for it. And this was a really great kind of, what are those, not crayons, but those colored
Mm-hmm.
pencils. She did a lot of work with colored pencils.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I worked with her
Mm-hmm.
to kind of get this image, and that's Brody and that's Isabella,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of this playful. And I even have like a playful byline that says, time travel is easy, finding a hero to save humanity, not so much. So
Mm-hmm.
this was the original cover. It didn't get a lot of traction. And I think
Mm-hmm.
people saw it and maybe thought, oh, is this kind of too playful? But then when I, reread it, I realized, it's not really that playful. Yes, there's some comedy, to break up the tension, but it's nonstop action. It's a lot of deep science. There's a lot of mind reality bending twists and
Mm-hmm.
plot twists and, death and some darker elements to it. And so I found another artist who specialized in NFTs. And I didn't even know what an NFT was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they were selling this NFT, and it was just this image. It didn't, it looked exactly like this. And as I was writing this book, and I saw it, and I said, oh my God, that's Marisol Rodriguez. That
Mm-hmm.
is the star of my second book that I'm writing. Like, as soon as I saw it, like, she has this, a mask. Her nickname is Agent Butterfly. I saw this image and I reached out to him and I said, can I just buy this NFT and can I use it for anything I want? And they said, yeah, if you buy it, you own it. You do whatever you want with it. And so I
Mm-hmm.
said, okay. And then also, can you make me one with a guy who, with a similar theme? And she said, yeah. And so purchased that. And then the third book, which comes out later this year, has a similar look and feel and theme. But as soon as I saw this NFT, and she had some that were, I guess, they're animated GIFs, and
Mm-hmm.
some that are just still. And I had to use Bitcoin to purchase it. It was the whole process, and
Oh, wow. Yeah.
it was very confusing. And she was explaining to me, I'm sorry, it's a he. I keep forgetting. My first artist was a she. The second one was a he.
Mm-hmm.
He was explaining to me over Twitter that, there's a blockchain, and when you purchase it with Bitcoin, it proves that you're the one and only owner of it. And I was just like, okay, whatever, just take
Yeah,
my
I know.
money, give
I'm
me the
so
art.
clueless
Yeah.
about that, like cryptocurrency and stuff. I have
Oh
no
my
idea.
God.
My fiance's really into that, and I'm just
Uh,
always like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. But I think you made a really good decision going with those covers because the tone
yeah,
is entirely different than the one
right.
that you started with, and I think that these, after you describing your book, I think that this suits it really well.
Yeah.
And I think it just, this is a better representation, I think, of your work based on at least how you've described it. So with
Yeah,
the
I
action
agree.
element, that you're in law enforcement, I think you're finishing up like 25 years, right? So does that kind of, I'm not saying is there like law enforcement themes, but like you've been in a field that I feel like you have a little bit more exposure to like a kind of action type thing than maybe the average person would. So does that kind of like play into it at all? Like, did it influence anything?
A little, but I mean, I've watched so many action movies and so many
Mm-hmm.
cop movies and so many, television shows, and it's hyperbole compared to what I've actually
Mhm.
encountered. I mean, it's, crazy running sideways along walls and shooting two guns. Like that does not happen in
Yeah,
my
no, no.
career.
I mean, I'm not thinking that you're like in
Yeah,
like high speed car chases or
yeah,
anything,
yeah,
but
yeah.
like I feel like you would probably be able to write like about even just the idea. You mentioned her name is like Agent. She's referred to as Agent Butterfly. So like
Uh-huh.
even just the very idea of having people who are part of like an agency like that, like you might
Yeah,
have a little bit more insight into something that is realistic, or like more believable than someone like
definitely
me who
the
basically just has to like make stuff up off the top of their head when it comes to things. So that's the only reason I asked.
Yeah, yeah. There's a little bit of that. There's, little preferences with different firearms. I'm a firearm instructor, and just
Mhm.
little things like that. And but I think the biggest thing for any writer is just being a trained observer. Which, like, I'm sure you're the same way. You can't go to Starbucks without noticing, oh, that guy at the end of the table has like a really cool hairdo.
Mhm.
Like that would look good in a story. Just all the little things that we notice that other people take for
Mhm.
granted, that our writer minds are always spinning and observing.
Yeah, I come up with like I don't know if this is sick or not, but like when I'm like if I were going to Starbucks or something and I have to wait in line, like I'll
Uh-huh.
be sitting there coming up with backstories for all the people around
Yeah.
me to
Uh-huh.
kind of like explain why they like, oh, why does this lady look disgruntled today? Like, like why
Oh
does this
yeah.
guy look like he's pissed? And like I just come up with all sorts of things like that. I did that a lot when I was still living in Washington D.C. and I was taking the metro every day, so I was taking the
Oh
train to work,
yeah.
and you see all sorts of crazy stuff. Just like when I was living in New York and I had to take the subway to work every day,
Oh wow.
you see some really crazy shit on there.
I can't imagine.
And oh my god, so I that was like so much creative fodder right there that I could work with.
Yeah.
Like I could. It was just always fun. So yeah, your brain as a writer is always going, and you're
Always.
always observing. To the point where I sometimes feel like I'm more of an observer than I am actually involved
Yeah.
in life. Like I feel like I'm always sort of just on the outside, kind of looking in, and maybe looking at things in a way that other people aren't looking at it, and then it sort of sets like it, sometimes you feel like a little bit removed from things, but it is
Yeah.
fun to kind of just use the things around you as inspiration and as a way to
A-
just fuel your creativity.
And do you do this too? You go to, the store or at work or something, and you come back and you can't wait to tell your significant other something that happened, but you don't just
Mm-hmm.
get to the end. You build it up and you
Oh yeah,
basically
yep.
tell it like
Mm-hmm.
you're writing a story. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
Oh
do that
yeah.
every time. And I feel like to the point where it's probably annoying to some people because I can never get straight to the point.
Right.
I'm always like
Right.
giving a huge background and context to it and
Yes.
building it up. And like people are just like, okay, like hurry up, like get to the point.
Yeah.
But I just I do it
Can't.
naturally. Like I can't
Yeah.
help it. And that's something I was complaining like sort of complaining about recently where so I just started a new job where this is the first job I've ever had where there is no drama. And
Oh,
I don't know what to
how
do because
boring.
I always like I love this stuff, but like at the same time I'm sort of like I always used to come home and be able to tell these really really big stories about the like ridiculous shit that I had seen that day. And now I'm like I don't have that anymore. I don't even know what to talk about. So I'm like it's just it's so different for me as
Yeah.
someone who likes storytelling in real life to not really have a whole lot of stories
Yeah.
to tell now.
But if
Yeah.
but if someone, knocks over, a thing of lemonade at the grocery store, you don't just come back and tell that. You do the whole backstory of like, I saw this person. You're not going to believe what the kind of shoes they had on. I already knew we were in trouble, and you just
Yes.
slowly build it up. Yeah, we
It's
all
so
do that,
funny.
I think.
Yeah. No, no. I feel like a lot of people watching this are going to be like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
I do that.
One of the best compliments I ever got as a writer had nothing to do with writing, but I remember we were in college, and me and two friends had something happen to us. I don't even remember what it was, but it was something hilarious. And then we circled back with a bigger group of friends, and they'd heard about this event, and they wanted a recap of it because they'd heard it third person, and they're like, "What happened to you guys at the concert or whatever?" And my friend who was there was starting to tell it, and another friend who wasn't there stopped him and said, "No, no, no, no. We want to hear it from Dub." And he tells it better. Like, I know you were there, but we want to hear it from him. And I just remember like going, "Oh wow, like that's my writer coming through." Like, Like, I don't, I don't care if I'm telling a story about, just one little incident or writing a, 100,000 word novel. Like, I'm putting everything I got into it.
That's a huge compliment because they're
Yeah.
basically saying like he's a natural storyteller. It's going to be way
Yeah.
more engaging if he says it. So,
And they're going to get the
yeah.
facts, but they don't want the facts. They want the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, like you can present it in a way that actually engages people and makes them like interested and not just like recounting a series of events. Like
Right.
there's a story to it. And no, that's awesome. So so for your second book, Enter the Butterfly. Sorry, I'm cutting right back to the book. Like,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
But hey, I want to hear about that one too. So do you want to read a little summary of
Sure.
that?
So this one kind of, um, if you read this blurb before you've read this book, there is one, takeaway. Obviously, Brody survives because he's mentioned in this book. So,
Yeah.
so but for, I think with most trilogies, the main character is at least going to be around somewhere to the third book. So
Yeah.
I will dispel any of those mysteries. But
Mhm.
when 16-year-old rebellious Marisol Rodriguez connects with the same hunk of dark matter from the future her father once possessed, her already crazy life goes into hyperdrive. Mari and her best friend, Olivia Murphy, navigate her new abilities at a private academy where nothing is as it appears. Marisol is recruited by the OSD and dives into the clandestine world of espionage as Agent Butterfly, eager to stop an AI cyber beings from gaining further control of a mutating world. So this takes place 17 years after the end of this book, since she's a
Okay.
teenager. Secrets from her parents' past and visitors from the future will clash in a stranglehold for tomorrow. Marisol will have to choose between her own path as Agent Butterfly or giving control of the singularity back to her dad. So,
Okay.
yeah. So I
Cool.
also had a 16-year-old, 17-year-old daughter when I was writing this, and I drew a lot of inspiration from that. And there's a lot of kind of that father-daughter competition of no dad, I know everything. And that's on a small scale when I'm just trying to show her how to parallel park. But times it by a billion here, where now she's got the weapon from the future, and she's doing what he was doing when he was young. And what is she going to do with it? Is she going to create her own path, or is she going to give it back to him, or and what else is that going to create?
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So when's I think you had said earlier that the third one will like hopefully come out later this year. Is that what you had said?
I'm shooting for November 12th, the
Okay.
anniversary of Stanley's death, and the
Oh,
anniversary of
yeah.
when I got the idea.
Hmm.
That would bring it all full circle. So that's my goal right now.
Yeah, that's very literary. I like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really cool. So everyone who's watching, please go check out these books that we've been speaking about. W.O. Torres' books. Right now, it's the Tomorrow Lives Today series. There are two books out of the Future trilogy. You've got The Singularity is Here and Enter the Butterfly. So sci-fi fans, please go check that out. Even if you're not a sci-fi fan, go check it out as well because it does sound really interesting to me, especially since you're writing in a subgenre of sci-fi that I think is something that a lot of people it'll be new to them to read, especially the ones on TikTok that I've interacted with and everything. I feel like can't speak today. It's been a long day. Chicano-Futurism is something that would be really interesting, especially since like what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, it's pretty.
While representation is better than it was
Mhm.
in like the 60s and 70s and 80s for Latinos, like this is it's cool to see someone who's writing that and really is embracing their like culture and heritage and identity and all of that and writing it into their novels, especially in a genre that maybe has been lacking that for a long time. So that's very cool. So everyone, please go check that out. I'm going to put the links in the description as always. So you'll see links to all those books as well as the short stories that we had spoken about. La Zona, and then El Viejo, El Diablo. I'm usually actually pretty good at Spanish,
You
and I
are. I
can't do
was
that
going to say
today
your
either.
accent is really good.
Oh, well, thank you. No, I have to speak it with patients all the time at work. So
Okay.
it's improved a lot, and it's like basically Italian. It's like almost
Yeah,
the same
you know
language.
what?
So
I every
yeah.
time I hear Italian, I think, I bet I could learn that. That
you
sounds a lot like
you could
Spanish.
learn it. You could learn it in like less than a week if you
What?
know
No, oh
Spanish
my God.
natively. Yeah,
Okay.
like it would be nothing to you. It's super easy.
Okay.
But yeah, so yeah, go check out those stories, and yeah, thank you so much for being here, Mr. Torres, W.O. Torres. This has been really cool, and I would love to talk to you again after the next novel is out. Uh,
Oh, that'd be awesome.
yeah, so so I'm gonna keep an eye out for that, and
Okay.
then I would love to have you back and talk about that one later this year, hopefully.
Oh, well, thank you, Joey, for having me. I appreciate it. I love talking sci-fi anytime. So
Yes, yes.
thanks
So
so much.
yeah, thank you. So everyone who's watching, if you're an indie author and you would be interested in appearing on my channel, please feel free to send me an email at roughrider@protonmail.com. I'm very slow to respond. I apologize. Be patient with me. I'm not ignoring you. I've just been kind of inundated with messages. So send me an email if you're interested, and I'll get back to you when I can. But until next time, thank you so much, everyone. God bless you all.